Good morning and hey now, PASW, staff, clients, and friends joining us. Welcome to Wednesday's class. We're going to do part 2 of Nino Rota, and we talked about Nino Rota being one of the most famous Italian composers, pianists, conductors, and teacher. You know, kind of transcended, because we hear polkas and tangos in his music, but they're elevated. They're not like marching band polkas. You know, he studied composition and conducting, and came to America and studied too. And he was a child prodigy, and was just a musical genius. So he elevated kind of the common Italian street music to a way that was implementing classical elements, and most of all, his music is just so damn fun. And what Nino Rota did with Fellini's movies is that he wouldn't write music to the action of what was going on. You know, today, if there is a character that walks into a house and the character's scared, you would have suspenseful music, like strings, trilling or whatever, and that would enhance the movie for the most part. But Nino Rota doesn't write like that, and Fellini doesn't want that. And this is many times the difference between European movies and American movies. American they rely on the narrative more. Okay, story of a man who's scared and he goes into a house. Okay, we need strings showing that. European cinema is much, much more relaxed and more open ended, in the sense where they don't provide the emotions. They don't give you them right away. They provide several different questions instead of relying on answers, and they create environments and moods more. That's just we're kind of making generalizations, but for the most part that's kind of true. We kind of looked at the French New Wave of cinema with Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and that approach was more experimental a little bit, and European films were more experimental, especially Fellini. I mean, he used surrealism in his movies, and with Nino Rota's soundtrack, he really was able to really dive deep into these surreal, dreams that the audience, were able to dive into too.
Ma è mai stata in aereo, signore? Ha mai sentito la radio di bordo? Oh, l'etere è pieno di voci che danno ordini, contrordini. Voci umane, vociacce col catarro, altro che spiriti, signora Bella. A sentire questa ingenuità il pensiero scientifico si offende. Sono forze elettriche, bizzarrie di sostanze sconosciute.
E non si potrebbe trattare di comunicazioni da altri pianeti raccolte in modo ingoscio?
Zitta tu.
E mi fai parlare. Ieri leggevo sul Radar Digest.
Zitta. Comunque, come medico le sconsiglio di continuare questi esperimenti.
Ma senta, dottore, quando ero bambina mi bastava chiudere gli occhi che subito vedevo. O anch'io da piccolina, quando chiudevo gli occhi, le palle che vedevo e che colori belli.
Davvero? Brava.
Castelli, piazze notturne, foreste e delle faccette piccole così che mi fissavano con due occhietti scintillanti. Mi facevano paura, ma era bellissimo. Per anni si è verificato questo fenomeno e poi più niente.
And we also talked about the famous director Fellini and their collaboration together. And we talked about how Spielberg and John Williams, Bernard Herrmann and Alfred Hitchcock, how the directors had their composers that they liked. And with the Michael Nyman class, we also talked about director Peter Greenaway and Michael Nyman's collaboration. So with Fellini and Nino Rota, this director-composer relationship is one of the most important relationships. All of Fellini's greatest films, which, they were all great in general, had Nino Rota's score, and he relied so much on Nino Rota's music to be successful and creating surreal moods and fantasies that he would tell the story to. And we mentioned Rota didn't really score to the action of the movie, to the narrative. He would create pieces of, and many times Fellini would just put it in as background music, almost to create this tone and mood and atmosphere in the movie of what was going on, because you hear a lot of people talking fast over the music, but it creates this really kind of circus-like, curious environment that's wondrous. I just think I love watching these and getting sucked into the whole circus-like mood and atmosphere of things that could be happening. And so if we think of Nino Rota's music, and if we think of Fellini's movies, they're melancholy, they're a little disturbing sometimes, but they're full of humor, and both of them created. And as we talked about in music, how do you create humor in music when there's no words? Nino Rota has so much humor, and it's so whimsical, all of his, and much like Fellini. I mean, that's why they complemented each other so well.
Eppure...
Come canta bene, signora Carla.
Oh no, sono una dilettante.
E quant'è carina. Da tanto tempo desideravo conoscerla.
Anch'io.
People get into Nino Rota through Fellini's films, and vice versa, probably. When you hear Nino Rota, you're like, well, oh, I got to see what the visuals are to this, my favorite music, because the soundtracks stand on their own. It's one thing, a lot of times film music gets a little, it's a little boring. It works really well for the movie, it's effective, but do you want to go and listen to that on your walk that you take? Most of the time not. With Nino Rota, the Godfather soundtrack, Romeo and Juliet, the Fellini soundtracks, those things, for the most part, I know I'm generalizing, they stand on their own as great compositions, as melodic, as humorous, as rich, as melancholy. It's great music that transcends just film music. And we'll end with a quote from Nino Rota. And he says, when I'm creating at the piano, I tend to feel happy, but the eternal dilemma, how can we be happy amid the unhappiness of others? I do everything I could to give everyone a moment of happiness. That's what's at the heart of my music. And I think that's so beautiful, and I love that. there's so much going on in the world, no matter what decade or day or time you're living in. But his whole thing is, if he can make somebody happy just for a moment, then he's done his job. And I think Fellini would agree with the same thing. And any artist can. If you could give somebody just a moment of happiness and take them away from their troubles, their worries, their anxieties, their fears, because life is so hard. We all know that. We all have different problems. Everybody's going through something, no matter what, right? And so, but art, if it can give us happiness just for a second or a minute or an hour or something, what a relief that is. And that's a way to change the world, right? To slowly change the world. So if I could just give everyone a moment of happiness, that's it. That's what he was happy. That made him happy. So I wonder if we could do that, not as composers. Maybe as if we are composers, great. But if we could give somebody a moment of happiness, wouldn't that be just the best? I mean, the best entertainment, the best therapy, any of that stuff. Let's try that. I'm going to try that today. Let's do it today. And worst thing that happens is that, it didn't work, but we tried. But what a great thing for an artist to say. You could have a big ego and say, I want to change the world and do all these things, and that's probably right. Or you could just start simply by making somebody happy, giving them a moment of happiness. And when you hear Nino Rota's music, it gives you several moments of happiness. It makes me so happy and a little sad. His music is melancholy, but Fellini's movies are just like that too. There's a sense of curiosity and happiness that I just continue to watch every year, to dig deeper into something, finding something I love about them. And I'm madly in love with Nino Rota and Fellini. I love that kind of cinema, that kind of art, really. I've said it all for sure. We had really two great classes on this brilliant composer and this brilliant filmmaker. So, okay, tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun, and, we'll get right back to work. So have a great rest of the day. Miss you and love you. Bye.